Hi, and welcome to Newsmakers and a new season of inside analysis and behind-the-scenes commentary from Santa Barbara's top journalists about the most important news events affecting our community. I'm your host, Jerry Roberts. Tonight, we'll look behind these headlines. Political leaders, activists, and scientists from around the world gather to confront Donald Trump's denial of climate change. Santa Barbara City Council moves to decriminalize the use of plastic straws, still trying to escape a wave of national ridicule. Both sides claim victory in the Plains oil spill trial, and the number of empty storefronts on State Street keeps climbing. What's the city doing about it? Our panel tonight, Kathryn Barnes, news producer for KCRW. City Hall reporter Josh Molina. Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Santa Barbara Independent. And Tyler Hayden, news editor for the Indy. Thank you all for coming. So Kathryn, the Trump administration has quit the Paris Agreement on climate change and is doing everything it can to boost coal and the carbon energy industry. And now we have the Global Climate Action Summit convened in San Francisco. What's the significance of this conference?
It's pretty significant. There's thousands of people in San Francisco right now. They're city leaders, state leaders, national leaders from around the country. And it's basically in direct defiance to Trump saying he wants to step out of the Paris climate deal. It's mostly spearheaded by Governor Jerry Brown, so he's kind of taking the lead in this. And there's all kinds of people. There's the Prime Minister of Barbados is there, the Mayor of Paris, mayors from cities and states and countries all over the place. There's more than 300 events. There's a climate change ballet. There's a hike through the redwoods to see how climate change is affecting the forest. So there's all kinds of stuff, but a lot of it is kind of this like schmooze fest of all these liberal environmentalists who want to make commitments with each other to do some change.
But one of the stories coming out of it is all the kind of lefty protesters and groups that are attacking Brown for not doing enough, I guess? Yeah,
so we have a reporter there right now, and he's basically saying inside all these conference rooms are these men and women in $2,000 suits making these commitments with one another. But then outside you have, the real people. You have these very liberal environmentalists from California, but then also around the state who are saying, okay, this is all great, but A, you guys aren't doing enough. B, you're not putting a seat at the table for low-income communities, people who are seeing the effects of climate change really, really quickly. And C, they're kind of angry that there's this whole part of the business sector who's a big part of the climate change conference, and so a lot of the protesters are saying, you guys just want to make money off of this.
Do you think that's true, or do you think that this network of people, as a practical matter, is doing anything in terms of green energy that's important?
I think it all is going to move it forward. I think that California, being the fifth largest economy in the planet, if it says you have a consensus at the elite level and at the grassroots level, both saying we need to do more, it can't do anything but help move that needle.
And the fact is that California has now adopted a zero carbon goal for
2045.
2045. Mm-hmm. And I guess the elected officials and the government officials who are attending have all made some similar commitment. What does it all add up to?
How much you mean?
Just is it enough to make a difference?
I think it could definitely make a difference. These are all commitments to, these plans. It's like the city of Santa Barbara committing to renewable energy by 2030. It won't happen until you actually see them starting to make these changes. So right now there's a lot of commitments and agreements and action plans, but once everybody goes back to their nation or their state or their city, we'll see if they become implemented.
Do you know, is there an electoral aspect to this? In other words, we have Trump and a Republican Congress. What we need to do as a practical matter is flip the House or do something like that.
It doesn't seem too political. It's kind of just like hey, if the federal government's not going to do it, then we're still going to go ahead and follow through with the plans that the Paris Climate Deal committed and that we're committing. And so we just don't need them. I mean, this is basically everyone who's there is from blue states or blue countries. Same with the protesters; they're mostly blue. So you don't see a whole lot of political division at the conference.
Yeah. Here's what I don't get. Why did the red state representatives not want to accept this? I mean, is it just because it's tribal and it's a...
Well, you know, what you're seeing actually in Florida, you're seeing some Republicans actually trying to talk about climate change.
Kelsey Brugger wrote a piece about one of those
heard
congressional...
that.
Yeah.
No, but it's you know, there are Republicans who are feeling the heat. If you're like in a low-lying place that's about to be underwater, it behooves you to at least acknowledge reality.
So do you acknowledge the reality now, Josh, here tonight, that Helene Schneider was right about the blue line?
Oh, so long ago, Jerry. Oh my goodness.
Well,
I
you
don't
were
even think I was in town.
You
when
were
she
a
was
young
pitching.
man. No, you were a young man.
But you know what's interesting is that it was funny. Like, the city council is now deliberating about what do we do about sea level rise, and so right now they're projecting that they're going to have to deal with sea level rise up of 6.6 feet by the end of the century, and it could actually be a lot closer to 15 feet, depending on what the emission levels are. So yeah, Helene was probably about 10 years too soon.
Now.
She was 10 years right.
Well, and Jerry Brown was about 40
yeah.
years early on all this stuff too. Okay. Well, speaking of saving the environment, you've been writing about the banning of plastic straws in Santa Barbara and all the unwanted media attention that was attracted with the plastic straw, use a straw, go to jail ordinance. I think, was that your phrase? I don't know. Anyway, cooler heads have now prevailed. What's the changes that are happening?
Jerry, you just want to sip out of a plastic straw from your illegal vacation.
Yeah, where
right
are our
off.
straws?
Times have changed here. Okay. So yes,
You're such a shill for this.
you just did an intense interview about climate change. You got to lighten things up a little bit here. Oh my goodness. In July, the council passed a ban on plastic straws, and what that means is that the restaurants and the businesses that sell plastic straws would not be able to give them out. They backpedaled because after they passed this, national conservative media, Fox News, bunch of outlets basically framed it as Santa Barbara would rather crack down on people who use straws instead of homeless people downtown. So
And immigrants.
yes, and so sort of saying, oh, you care about this, but not about all these other issues. So it took on a life of its own, and for about a week and a half there, Santa Barbara was ridiculed. They were sent emails from conservatives all over the country saying your town is ridiculous, we're not going to go there. Many of the council members were asked to appear on these national shows. All of them declined, but it was right before the council was going to go on recess, so they were able to sort of not have to deal with it too much. What they decided to do, because national media said, they picked up on the part of the proposed ordinance that said could be potentially a misdemeanor if a restaurant owner gives somebody a plastic straw.
It was in there, right? It said it was a misdemeanor.
It was in there. Now, as a practical matter, still one of your phrases, the city says, oh, that would never happen. We're never going to actually put somebody in jail or charge them with a misdemeanor. But it's there, and so they met again this week, the ordinance committee, and they extracted that from the ordinance and decided to push it forward. That was the 3-member ordinance committee. There's still one holdout, Randy Rouse. He, at his restaurant that he owns, the Paradise Cafe, he says he's gone to paper straws, so it's really not an issue for him, but he believes that public education, public awareness is the best way to deal with this issue, and that there should not be straw policing going around town. He thinks that people do a good enough job on their own rather than having an ordinance that tells people you can't give a straw away.
So what did Jason say? Jason had a great line about
Jason
that.
Dominguez.
Jason Dominguez.
Yeah, so at the first meeting in July, he was for the plastic straw ban, and he said that unfortunately common sense is not common, and we need to do everything we can to regulate people's
Government
lives.
has to regulate
Like every
everything.
aspect of people's lives.
Yeah, something like,
It was
unfortunately,
a very overreaching comment.
government has to regulate people's lives, and he got a lot of flack from that, and he actually issued an apology a couple weeks
Which
later.
was a non-apology.
It was a it was funnier than the first thing he said. Is he said, I put together a string of words, which sounded like Bill Clinton or something like that. He said, I put together a string of words that didn't come out right. And so he said, that's not what I meant. He said he was being rhetorical. And Jason probably is going to run for mayor, and he
Really?
needs.
There's news.
He
I didn't
need,
know that.
well, if I were advising, if I were trying
Which
to read
clearly
the,
you are. But
I mean, he's
you're
probably,
listening, Jason.
he's going to have that opportunity to run for mayor and still hold his seat at some point.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's right.
they all do it, right? So he's probably going to do it. And, he needs to appeal to a broader base. He needs to appeal to the people who don't like Kathy Murillo. And clearly that was you're never going to get the business vote if you go during a meeting and say that government needs to regulate every aspect of people's lives.
Tyler,
So he backpedaled.
why do we care about plastic straws? How big?
Because they're the scourge of the environment. I mean, but they're bad. They're not out killing people or animals.
Turtles,
Turtles.
sometimes.
And I was going to say on State Street or downtown. I mean, they do get out in the environment and they are a problem. I mean,
globally, is it contributing?
they're
a
one
huge
of the
amount?
they're one of the main polluters. Like if you try to categorize the different types of plastics that are out there, I think they're one of the worst. And I mean, as a consumer, as someone who is regularly downtown buying drinks, buying food, I get the public education point, but I don't know if I would like necessarily think of that when I'm getting a drink or when I'm buying something. It's like someone kind of needs to stop me. I guess I agree with Jason. My life needs to be regulated at this point. Someone needs to stop me.
Every aspect.
Yeah, someone needs to stop me from getting
for
a
Jason.
straw.
My
Yeah.
life needs regulation.
Jason
You've been in the shower too long.
Yeah. Someone needs to stop the straw before it gets to me because I'm not going to think of
Did
it.
we get rid of
otherwise.
almonds? Trump's doing that.
But no, I think it's a rhetorical gesture that people have to sort of change little tiny aspects of how they live their lives in these mundane details. And you have an accumulation of that, and sooner or later it does make a difference. If you look at the mass weight of straws in the ocean, it's probably just a speck, but it's just another way we can change little things and make a little bit of a difference.
I just wish paper straws were better.
Held up better
Yeah.
in your cocktail.
Yeah.
I gotta say this: paper straws are lousy.
Yeah.
They just don't taste. It's not the same. So basically, you just have to learn to go without a straw.
Yeah.
because-
Or you get one of those like metal straws you can get at French Press for $8 or whatever.
We carry it around.
You carry it around, just
But
put
then
it in
it
your-
tastes like metal.
yeah.
Now, some people like the metal straws, and
Yeah.
I think it's
Oh, some
interesting.
people do.
I've noticed this
Anyone
whole.
on this panel?
I like the glass
I haven't
straws
tried them
personally.
yet,
Yeah.
but I've kind of noticed this whole like straw shaming type thing start to happen, like drought shame or water shaming. When people are watering their lawns or something like that, you start to see people, with straws, and you're like thinking, I
So
don't
if
know
you're
that
about
kind of
really
person.
like,
oh, you're that kind
You're
of
kind of a
person.
jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, if you're in the 1%, then you can go. I would like ice water with a plastic straw, please.
Yeah, maybe you'll have all these people in defiance saying, I have a disability, I need my straw.
Restaurant owners have to keep plastic straws on hand though, because people with a disability, if you say I have a disability, I need a plastic straw, they have to give them to them.
So they
And-
have to keep them on hand.
Yes, and there's no proof. If you want a plastic straw and say, you need it for a disability, they're not going to make you prove it. So they're going to give it to you.
So this is going to pass.
Yeah, it's Randy's going to vote against it, of course, but yes, maybe who knows what Jason's going to say at this point. But there's definitely a council majority council majority. And
You could
final
kind of say that any given week, couldn't you?
Kristen Snedden's point, by the way, to your point, is Santa Barbara's a tourist city. Lots of people come here. We own a greater share of the problem. So it's different than some other city when it comes to a plastic straw ban. We're throwing more stuff away because we have a lot of people coming in. So there's definitely
She
votes
ought to
there.
run for mayor. That's what
What I couldn't believe is in your story the other day that Visit Santa Barbara got so much flack
Yeah.
that they had to hire like an emergency crisis management
Oh,
Yes, they
yeah.
did.
consultant.
And, and it was if the person, one of the things was their person is very hostile and they're criticizing, liberal Santa Barbara, hang up the phone.
Hang it
hang
up.
it up.
Yes, hang it up. That was one of
Really?
the bullet points.
Wow.
Wow.
Don't engage.
And
That was
send-
in my July story. I didn't rehash it for the most recent one.
Send them
The
a,
archives.
Right.
send them a subscription to the
Take a
Santa
peek.
Barbara Independent. All right, speaking of despoiling the environment.
These segues.
Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum. So a jury convicted Plains Oil of 9 of 15 counts in the 2015, coming from the 2015 pipeline spill, but only one felony.
Right.
So weren't they really the winners? Didn't they win by losing?
It's are you a little bit pregnant, or you're guilty? You're a corporation. You've just been found guilty of a felony criminal count. So, we didn't get found guilty on 3
And what was that felony they were convicted of?
for knowing, or they either knowingly allowed or should have known they were engaging in practices that resulted in 142,000 gallons of crude oil spilling out of their pipeline and getting into the ocean.
So clearly all of the top executives will be going to jail now?
Yeah, Jerry and Harry. Greg and Harry will all be going to jail.
They're
No,
not,
nobody
though.
goes to jail. I mean, that was kind of an interesting sidelight of the story, which is there was, in the initial indictment, a criminal charges brought against one individual employee, a guy named James Buchanan. Charges actually were dropped against Buchanan because the prosecuting attorney sort of withheld information that might have sort of put him in a better light when the DAs got the indictment from the grand jury.
Exculpatory.
Exculpatory information was withheld. So that didn't look so hot.
I'm going to use that word more.
Yeah.
So Buchanan walked. But the deal was Buchanan...
So does Plains like have to pay a fine or what's?
Okay, here's the deal. Plains is going to have to pay somewhere 1.5, 2, 3, whatever, $1 million in fine.
Couch change.
For them, that's going to be couch change. But when your good buddy, Barry Capello, gets through suing them on behalf of the thousands and thousands of plaintiffs he represents in a class action lawsuit, having 9 criminal counts, 1 felony on the record will aid his case
I see.
immeasurably.
I see.
And
So
he's going for how much, or how much do you think he'll possibly get?
Who knows?
and who's in the class? Who's in the?
You have fishermen, you've got property owners, businesses, people who own beach property, anybody who was had to take a hotel room practically because of the spill.
How about people who say, for example, vacation rentals?
They, I'm sure, are going to be part of it.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You got the 800 number handy? So this is a big victory for Joyce Dudley then?
Yes. I mean, if you could not win against an oil company in Santa Barbara, you pretty much should go home. And I have to say, to be honest, when I started watching this trial, which for the record was the most excruciatingly dull, existentially self-doubt inducing experience I've had.
More than the show.
More than the show. I was like, what am I doing with my life? It was so bad. I was
talking to me.
I was thinking, what the hell? They're going to lose this. They did not start off strong, but I think the oil company kept going, hey, we meant well, I mean, they had some of the best attorneys with some of the worst arguments.
However, we will all recall that it was your big scoop during the spill that they did not have a shut-off valve.
Automatic
And of
shut-off.
course, all of the legislation that was introduced at that time has gone forward and is now in place, correct?
It's now in complete limbo. So yes, there was the pipe did not have an automatic shut-off valve, And it was the only pipeline in Santa Barbara County not to have one, and so the valve would not have stopped the rupture, but it would have contained it. Josh Williams, your big friend, he got a bill through the state legislature saying pipeline companies must use best available technology. Obviously, this would be that. That was in 2016. Fast forward to 2018. The fine print has yet to be written.
Did the governor sign it?
The governor signed it, but the fine print that says this is what this bill
This is
actually
how this
means
is supposed to work.
doesn't exist. There isn't even draft language yet. So the environmentalists are saying to Plains when they have an application to reinstall a new pipeline. And the environmentalists are saying, Plains, are you going to have a shut-off valve? And Plains are saying, hey, we're going to do whatever the law says, but the law doesn't say that yet.
All right. All right. I'm trying to think of a segue
Yeah, how to
here.
pivot to this one.
It's,
To State Street.
well, speaking of State Street,
Meanwhile,
Speaking of corroded pipelines.
Yeah, there you go.
so you've been looking at a lot of the multiple problems confronting State Street, and your piece this week, which everybody has to read, they hire this consultant who gives them a report on what to do 2 years ago. Then she comes back 2 years later and gives the same report because they haven't done anything.
Yeah, that was kind of striking. And I mean, she had sort of the general suggestions that everyone's been talking about. You know, make intermingle businesses, different kind of businesses under the same roof. It's all about experiential shopping. I didn't have it in there, but she actually suggested, I thought she was kidding at first, that for any store that sells winter clothing, that you should have a freezer in the middle of your store so that you can try on your jacket.
I've been to one of those. They're
Sounds
pretty
kinda
cool.
cool, really?
They're
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So there was stuff like that, but then
Instagram
Is
worthy.
that's what experiential shopping?
I think that's a version of it. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I can never forget.
I know. But a couple of things that she brought up that that should have resonated, I think, a little bit more a couple years ago. One of them being a new, it's kind of esoteric, but a new funding model for our downtown organization that could generate a lot more money and bring business owners into the fold more.
So that the property owners are paying the fee instead of the business owners.
Correct. So the actual building owners, like you just said, instead of the tenants. So that was sort of interesting. She brought it up 2 years ago. It could have been implemented by now.
Why hasn't it been?
I think a big chunk of that has to do with our downtown organization, now called Downtown Santa Barbara. They actually started looking at it a while ago, but there's some really deep rifts internally there, and there's
They're
a lot
dysfunctional.
They're dysfunctional.
pathological.
Yeah, they can't get along.
So who are there's like very conservative people that don't want to pay any.
Correct.
And is that a minority? Is
Yeah,
that-
the way it was described to me is a handful of very vocal anti-tax people.
and can we name names or?
I would rather not right now, because I only think I know a couple, but I'm not totally sure.
Tyler's phone number for those of you.
Yeah. So that's a shame, and I think it goes to the multitude of problems contributing to the State Street issue. But this, I think, it's not exactly low-hanging fruit, but it's a very practical, doable step that could be taken to generate more money for the downtown organization, which they could have put on more events, could improve landscaping, maintenance, all that kind of stuff that brings people downtown, that makes it look shiny and new and exciting, that they just don't really
And
do now.
what about Macy's? Where are we with Macy's?
Macy's is still empty.
And you said there's more empty storefronts than.
There's a Halloween store.
There's a
in
Halloween,
Macy's.
yeah, exactly. And the Magic Store too? Is that the same thing?
World of-
Oh, Josh,
World of
Yes.
Magic.
now you're
Big
talking
business.
Josh's language.
Yeah.
Big money.
Right.
And then we're gonna have Christmas at Macy's,
Yep.
just like the old days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's
actually there's going to be a talk there in a couple weeks put on by the architects to discuss how they're bringing someone from Santa Monica and bringing someone from San Luis Obispo to tell us
That know what they're doing.
to tell us what we need to do, which is ironic. We were just talking earlier that years ago our people used to be the ones recruited to go to cities to explain best practices, and now it's the complete opposite. We're bringing in folks to hear how they solve problems.
Josh, you would agree with me, would you not, that one of the fundamental problems here is a lack of political leadership coming from the mayor's office?
Well, We have a strong city administrator model here, so there's not much the mayor can do.
Well, Nina's doing a lot, right?
She gives presentations. You sound like you're in Angel Martinez's camp. You would have been on the first plane to
No, I don't know.
Seattle
Who were these
or-
guys that were doing they're trying to put 4 businesses where the Pete's thing was, and then they got
The
red
mosaic.
tagged
Right.
the
Yeah.
first day for what?
They said they were doing too much moving of stuff on the
Took out a
inside.
counter.
Yeah, they took out a counter. Welcome to Santa Barbara.
Right.
Open for business.
I mean, to the city's credit, I will say that they're trying some new things. They're doing these pop-up stores. They had an event the other night where they explained to retailers how they could actually make a pop-up happen. There's like 100 people there. In Santa Barbara terms, that's a big deal. They're going to have another one for property owners where they, again, will sort of explain the ins and outs of that. So, I mean, I will give them.
So who's guiding this process?
I think Nina
Nina
Johnson, an assistant city administrator. This seems to
she's
be
a
her.
first-rate.
Yeah, I think she's great. She seems like she's got some energy behind this and is thinking a little bit outside the box and is willing to kind of shake things up a little bit, try new stuff at least. But I think she's got her hands full with other projects, and it's not.
Government blames the property owners. Property owners
Right.
do not want to lower their rents beyond what they've done, and they blame the government. And so nothing gets done because nobody wants to put themselves out there. So like Mosaic, these people are getting creative.
That's-
Pop-up shops, let's do something that's not going to take forever for a permit. And people are getting creative. But long-term solutions, it's got to be cheaper for local businesses to have a place on State Street because government, conservatives hate government running their lives, but they want government to fix State Street.
And the government does not set the rents. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And is homelessness still a big issue that's being
Yeah,
divisive?
it's an issue, but there's some movement on new programs. United Way's looking at reconnecting homeless to their family members' previous jobs to kind of get them back on their feet. I will say I think the pretty vehement anti-homeless rhetoric that was out there for a while, that this can all be blamed on the homeless, that's kind of getting toned down a little bit, which is interesting. People aren't just trying to push it all on them, but it's still part of the galaxy of problems.
Probably largely because of your coverage of the issue. I would think that's
His sympathetic coverage,
his
is what you're saying?
sympathetic coverage.
well, yeah, it was kind of funny. When the city council had its first big come to Jesus meeting in the council chambers on this, Dick Birdie, who is one of the biggest property owners downtown, and Jim Cannell, I guess the two of them together were about 80%. They talked about putting a couple $100,000 to get all the homeless from downtown to a plot of land off by the sheriff's offices,
No, that's a good idea.
which was really going to fly.
Here's the key question, Nick. When you're looking for experiential shopping, do you go to a pop-up store or a legacy retailer?
As a millennial, I will say
Oh.
breweries will solve State Street.
And there's a lot of those
And
coming.
there are
Yeah.
like 5
Yeah.
coming, so
Yeah.
problem
Yeah,
solved.
when
There we
in
go.
doubt,
Just
Boom.
keep drinking the problem.
when
Right.
in doubt, drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
The
All
folks
right.
don't got wine, we got beer.
right.
All right, once again, we've gone through an entire half hour. Well, thanks to tonight's panel, Kathryn Barnes, Josh Molina, Nick Welsh, and Tyler Hayden. Thank you all for watching. Please visit our website, newsmakerswithjr.com, and our YouTube channel, where you'll find an archive of our past shows and special interviews. Thanks also to our director, as always, JP Montalvo, and to our crew, Lizzie, Elliot, Herb, and Mike. And to our handwriting expert, who can't figure out whether it's print or cursive, our top-ranking, high-powered, high-energy senior executive producer, Hap Freund. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.